How does a civilization become one of the largest on Earth without kings, armies, or monuments? The Indus Valley rewrites the model of ancient power. Across 500,000 square miles, its cities followed the same logic. Standardized bricks, regulated drainage, uniform weights, and architectural precision seen nowhere else in the ancient world. Yet nowhere in this landscape appear royal tombs, palaces, or inscriptions announcing who designed it. The system functioned without declaring itself. Trade objects traveled thousands of miles, from Mesopotamia to Bahrain, while the civilization that produced them left no written explanation for its reach. The patterns suggest coordination across vast distances, but the archive remains silent on the mechanisms behind it. This silence is the key. The Indus world rose through networks, not rulers. Through standards, not conquest. Through organization embedded in infrastructure rather than authority carved in stone. Its power expanded along rivers, routes, and engineered pathways that linked distant communities without central rule. And when the rivers shifted, the system fractured, not through violence, but dispersal. The civilization ended, yet its methods endured in the settlements that followed. This documentary traces that hidden system, the roots, the artifacts, the planning, and the environmental forces that shaped one of the ancient world's most enigmatic civilizations. Welcome to History Brought Alive, where forgotten stories rise from the ashes and legends walk again. And this is the Indus Valley, as revealed in world history, an epic overview. If you want more chapters brought to life, subscribe and use the link in the description to get the book. Let's begin. Rivers of exchange, the hidden geography of Indus power. The Indus civilization did not rise because of its cities. It rose because of a transport network older than most recorded histories. Trade existed before writing. Geography shaped authority before kings existed. Why do most accounts ignore the roots that sustained one of the world's largest Bronze Age cultures? The Indus Valley Civilization stretched across 500,000 square miles, larger than Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Yet its cities appear without the usual signatures of ancient power. No palaces, no royal tombs, no monumental propaganda. This absence is rarely addressed. A civilization without kings still built a continental network. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro emerged along river corridors that shifted over millennia. These settlements were not isolated urban centers. They were nodes in a system shaped by water, movement, and exchange. Most reconstructions understate this. Why do the cities look uniform despite being hundreds of miles apart? The consistency signals coordinated planning, but the coordination did not come from royal command. It came from the roots that bound these sites together. Here the pattern begins. The Indus system relied on a complex interaction of rivers that changed course repeatedly. Entire settlements rose or declined, depending on the shifting behavior of the Indus and its tributaries. This feature is rarely emphasized. Stability depended on rivers that were never stable. Harappa's location along ancient trade paths positioned it as a central distribution point. Mohenjo-Daro's prominence stemmed from its access to river transport that linked coastal and inland routes. Most narratives treat these cities as isolated marvels. Why do we study the sites, but not the routes that connected them? The standardized weights found across the region point to regulated exchange systems. Identical measures appear thousands of miles apart. This uniformity contradicts assumptions of a fragmented society. A decentralized civilization produced centralized precision. Urban planning, straight streets, drainage grids, elevated citadels reflects adaptation to flooding and movement, not royal design. Here, the structure becomes visible. The trade network extended far beyond the valley. Indus seals were found in Mesopotamia and Bahrain. Pottery and weights reached Iran and Iraq. This detail alters the entire interpretation. Indus influence expanded before its script can be deciphered. The docks at Lothal indicate maritime infrastructure engineered for international exchange. Its basin, warehouse, and channels reveal a port, not a ceremonial site. Most accounts minimize this. Why is the Indus world described as isolated when its artifacts appear across the Near East? The complication emerges from the evidence. Vast networks without visible rulers. No inscriptions describe kings. No monuments proclaim victories. No royal signatures mark trade. This inversion is rarely confronted. A system large enough for global exchange but silent about authority. The absence of hierarchy does not imply absence of structure. It implies structure distributed across routes, not concentrated in capitals. This is where the system diverges from other ancient civilizations. A subtle conclusion emerges. The Indus civilization's power did not derive from rulers, armies, or monuments. It derived from regulation, standardized measures, coordinated flows of goods, and shared material culture. This significance is routinely understated. The world's earliest large-scale economic network functioned without visible kings. The geography shaped the roots shaped the settlements shaped the civilization. The Indus story begins not with cities but with movement. What kind of society builds its identity around exchange rather than authority? This is the foundation for understanding the hidden trade empire. Let's continue to study and examine the artifacts that did the traveling, objects that reveal a network broader than most ancient empires. The smallest items carried the largest implications. Objects in transit, evidence of an invisible empire. The Indus civilization left no kings, no conquests, and no origin myths. It left objects small enough to hold, durable enough to travel thousands of miles. The artifacts reveal more than the cities. What moved tells us more than what remained. Why did the trade goods survive when the culture that produced them disappeared? Across Mesopotamia, Bahrain, Iran, and Iraq, archaeologists found seals, beads, pottery, and standardized weights unmistakably originating from the Indus Valley. This distribution is rarely examined as a coordinated pattern. The Indus world exported identity without exporting authority. The small steatite seals, each with compact symbols and animal motifs, appear far beyond their homeland. Their presence in foreign ports implies agreements, recognition, and systems of verification. Most accounts minimize this implication. How does an undeciphered script regulate international exchange? Objects become the only surviving documentation of a system that transcended its geography. Indus seals discovered in Mesopotamia suggest organized exchange between distant civilizations. These were not random finds. They appear in contexts associated with administration and trade. Most summaries treat this as incidental evidence. Consistent distribution is not coincidence, it's infrastructure. The seals may have functioned as identifiers, markers of goods, merchants, or approvals. Their standard size and standardized imagery indicate coordinated production. Most reconstructions overlook the scale of this uniformity. Why do the symbols remain consistent across such vast distances? Beads crafted from carnelian and faience appear in West Asian graves. Their craftsmanship matches workshops at Harappa and Lothal. This precision reveals something deeper. A civilization with no known leaders produced objects recognized everywhere. Trade weights found in the valley use ratios so uniform they match across hundreds of sites. Such consistency implies systematic regulation, not informal barter. The materials show the system, the goods show its reach. The challenge arises from what the objects do not reveal. No accompanying texts describe trade officials. No proclamations identify merchant guilds. No royal decrees define commercial policies. This silence is rarely confronted. The largest Bronze Age trade network left no explanation for its own existence. The civilization's undeciphered script complicates interpretation. Without reading the seals, scholars infer meaning from distribution, context, and replication. Most reconstructions avoid this interpretive gap. How do you reconstruct an economy without reading its records? Artifacts found in Mesopotamia imply direct or indirect contact, possibly through Dilmun, modern Bahrain, a known intermediary. This suggests a decentralized structure. A silent system shaped interactions with civilizations that recorded everything. Foreign scripts document trade. Indus artifacts confirm presence, but the Indus side remains unspoken. The evidence forms an outline without the interior. The objects reveal the character of the civilization. Coordinated, regulated, expansive. Their spread demonstrates a network managed through shared standards rather than imposed authority. This significance is consistently understated. Standardization replaced kingship. Where other civilizations used rulers to enforce order, the Indus used repeatable systems embedded in everyday tools, weights, seals, and materials. The objects function as the civilization's unintentional archive. What kind of world can operate globally without leaving a written explanation? The next part moves from the traded objects to the places that engineered them. Cities whose structure reveals how an empire without rulers governed itself. Control existed, but nowhere visible. Cities without kings, the urban mechanisms behind Indus power. The Indus civilization built some of the world's most advanced cities, without palaces, without royal tombs, and without visible rulers. No other Bronze Age society reached this scale without kings. Authority existed, but no one claimed it in stone. How does a civilization plan cities without centralized power? Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dholavira, Lothal, each engineered with precision. Straight streets, standardized bricks, elevated citadels, and drainage systems unrivaled for their time. This uniformity appears without inscriptions, proclamations, or identifiable architects. The structures reveal planning. The archive reveals no planners. Excavations show bathrooms in nearly every house, integrated sewage channels beneath the streets, and residential blocks arranged with mathematical regularity. Most accounts emphasize the engineering. But who coordinated engineering across hundreds of miles? The answer lies in the design principles embedded throughout the cities. Indus cities followed a pattern, a raised citadel area and a lower residential town. The citadel contained granaries, wells, and the Great Bath, structures associated with shared civic life rather than royal authority. This arrangement challenges familiar models. Collective institutions replaced monumental rule. At Mohenjo-Daro, the Great Bath, waterproofed with bitumen, suggests ritual or civic functions requiring community participation. Most reconstructions frame this as ceremonial. What if it reflects governance rather than religion? Granaries, located near major intersections, point to centralized storage and distribution of agricultural surpluses, yet no inscriptions identify overseers. This absence forces a different interpretation. A system coordinated resources without visible administrators. Every brick follows the same ratio, 1:124, whether found in Harappa or Mohenjo-Daro. Standardization across such distances implies shared rules. These rules shaped urban life more than any individual leader. Despite architectural uniformity, no palatial complexes appear in any Indus city, no monumental sculptures of rulers. No inscriptions celebrating conquests. This is rarely confronted directly. A civilization this organized reveals no hierarchy. Foreign civilizations interacting with the Indus, Mesopotamia included, recorded kings, wars, and diplomacy. The Indus left no parallel accounts. Most reconstructions treat this as a mystery. Is hierarchy absent or simply not memorialized? The distribution of workshops across residential sectors suggests localized craft production rather than centralized state-managed industry. This decentralization, however, coexists with rigid urban planning. Local autonomy nested inside continental standardization. Such tension is uncommon in ancient civilizations with large-scale infrastructure. The absence of visible elite spaces complicates the standard model of governance. The evidence points to a governing system embedded in design, not in rulers. Authority manifested in uniform measurements, regulated drainage, standardized construction, and shared civic structures. This interpretation is frequently understated. Urban planning was the governing institution. Civilization without kings engineered one of the world's earliest coordinated municipal systems. The cities reveal a model of collective control, a form of governance distributed across architecture, logistics, and shared civic norms. What happens to such a system when its infrastructure fails? That question leads directly to the next chapter. Here we examine the vulnerabilities built into this silent system, vulnerabilities exposed by rivers, climate, and shifting geography. The cities survived rulers, but not the landscape that shaped them when the rivers moved, environmental stress and systemic fragility. The Indus civilization collapsed not because of invasion or political turmoil, but because the landscape withdrew the conditions that made it possible. Rivers moved. Cities could not. Geography shifted faster than the system it supported. Why did a civilization built on adaptability fail to adapt when it mattered most? The Indus cities depended on rivers that flooded, deposited silt, altered course, and carved new channels across the plains. This instability was known and engineered into their planning. But the river system did not remain predictable. The environment shifted on a scale no city grid could counter. Archaeological layers show entire districts buried beneath meters of silt. Walls, wells, workshops, submerged under the quiet aftermath of repeated flooding. Most accounts treat this as incidental. How do you maintain a trade empire when the geography supporting it collapses beneath you? The system's stability depended on rivers that offered both connection and destruction. Flooding was not new to the Indus system. The cities were elevated, drainage was engineered, and flood patterns were expected. But sediment layers show changes in magnitude and frequency, silt burying settlements up to 30 feet deep. This escalation is rarely emphasized. Adaptation works until the magnitude exceeds expectation. The drying of the Saraswati Gaga Hakra. River system reduced water availability in areas previously suited for farming. Settlements began shifting, reorganizing, or abandoning their earlier locations. Most reconstructions flatten this complexity. Was this a climate trend or a sequence of river-driven collapses? The geographic evidence suggests persistent environmental stress, less reliable water, altered courses, expanding aridity. This created a systematic pressure on trade routes. Movement of rivers disrupted movement of goods. The network's strength, its geographic spread, became a liability when rivers no longer supported long-distance exchange. As environmental stress increased, the coordinated urban system began to fragment. Cities shrank, workshops dispersed, and long-distance trade waned. This transformation is often understated. Collapse did not begin in cities. It began between them. Trade routes that once connected Harappa to Lothal and Mohenjo-Daro became unreliable. Floods blocked passages, drying rivers created unnavigable regions. Silt transformed fertile land into temporary wastelands. Most accounts focus on external causes. Why search for invaders when the landscape itself became the adversary? No mass graves, no destruction layers, and no signs of widespread violence appear in the archaeological record. The collapse lacks indicators of war. This absence forces a re-evaluation. The system failed quietly, not through conflict but erosion. Some populations migrated eastward toward the Ganges, following more stable water patterns. Others abandoned cities altogether as trade ceased to sustain them. The urban network dissolved not from a single event, but from repeated environmental interruptions. The Indus collapse reveals the limits of a system without centralized authority. When the environment destabilized, no single institution could coordinate a unified response. This conclusion is routinely minimized. The same decentralization that enabled growth ensured fragmentation. As roots failed, standards weakened, cities diminished, and the interconnected system fractured into regional cultures. The collapse was not an ending, but a dispersal, a transition into smaller, more adaptable communities. What becomes of a civilization when its cohesion evaporates, but its people remain? The answer lies in the trade networks that persisted even after the cities fell. We continue to the final phase of the Indus legacy, how a civilization without kings influenced regions long after its cities disappeared. The empire vanished, but the systems survived. After the cities, the dispersal of Indus systems into new cultures. The Indus civilization ended, but its practices did not. The system vanished, the people did not. Collapse produced continuity, not disappearance. The civilization dissolved into the cultures that followed it. What survives when a civilization falls without leaving kings, myths, or empires behind? When the Indus cities diminished, their populations did not scatter chaotically. Evidence shows gradual movement eastward, settling near regions where water remained reliable. This migration is rarely framed as transformation, a collapse that looks like dispersal, not destruction. The archaeological record replaces monumental centers with smaller farming settlements, localized craft production, and decentralized habitation patterns. Most accounts describe this as decline. But decline from what? Centralized authority or distributed systems? Without cities, the network reassembled itself as smaller, adaptable communities. The Indus grid disappeared, but its standardized brick ratio persisted in later settlements. Some drainage practices continued in modified forms. Agricultural traditions remained consistent. These continuities received limited attention. Elements of a fallen civilization survived longer than the civilization itself. Trade diminished, but it did not collapse entirely. Regional exchanges continued, albeit without the long-distance networks linking the Indus to Mesopotamia and Bahrain. Most reconstructions overlook this survival. Why does the narrative stop when the cities fall? The shift from urban centers to rural settlements reflects an adaptive response to environmental stress rather than cultural erasure. And yet the absence of writing obscures continuity. What continues is visible archaeologically, but invisible textually. The people who built the standardized systems simply reorganized into different geographic patterns. Civilization did not end. Its scale changed. The absence of elite architecture in the later phases complicates interpretation. Without large public structures or inscriptions, the archaeological record resembles a cultural blank. This is misleading. The absence of hierarchy is not the absence of culture. What disappears is coordination across vast distances. What remains is regional variation expressed through pottery styles, settlement patterns, and localized craft traditions. Most accounts attribute this variation to external pressure. But if no invasion layers exist, what explains the fragmentation? The answer lies in the network's earlier strength. A system distributed across rivers and routes weakens when geography forces isolation. Without roots, shared standards lose relevance. Connectivity enabled coherence. Disconnection produced divergence. The civilization dissolved into multiple regional cultures that carried fragments of Indus practices into later periods. Continuity exists, but it no longer appears as a unified entity. The Indus dispersal demonstrates a different model of cultural legacy. A civilization whose influence persists not through centralized power, but through distributed habits, structures, and techniques. This pattern is rarely highlighted. Legacy can survive where civilization does not. Standardized weights, brick ratios, drainage concepts, and agricultural routines passed into successor populations without monumental expression. This diffusion complicates the search for a singular Indus identity. How do you trace a civilization that survives by dissolving? The answer requires examining not what was lost, but what persisted. The final chapter asks what the Indus legacy means, how a civilization without kings, armies, or monuments shaped regions long after its cities fell. Influence without empire. Echoes of a silent civilization, the enduring legacy of Indus systems. The Indus civilization is remembered for its disappearance, not for its endurance. Yet the parts that survived shaped regions long after the cities were gone. Collapse erased the centers, not the systems. What ended was visibility, not influence. How does a civilization endure when its own record remains silent? The absence of deciphered writing restricts direct insight into Indus, beliefs, myths, and governance. The civilization's voice is missing, but its structures remain, embedded in architecture, measures, and the organization of daily life across later cultures. This silence is often interpreted as emptiness. A silent archive can still contain a system. The Great Bath's engineering, the standardized brick ratios, the drainage grids, the uniform weights. These are mechanisms that later societies adapted, modified, or inherited without knowing their origins. Most accounts focus on what vanished. What if the Indus legacy is not in monuments, but in methods? The evidence suggests continuity without recognition. As populations migrated eastward after environmental decline, they carried with them agricultural routines, settlement patterns, and craft traditions refined over centuries. These continuities are rarely foregrounded. Identity dissolves, but practice persists. Even after the cities fell, standardized brick ratios appear in successor settlements. Drainage principles, although simplified, resurface in later urban forms. Most reconstructions overlook these threads. How do we measure influence when it spreads without names? The Indus model of decentralized governance, a system coordinated through standards rather than rulers, left structural echoes in how later communities organized labor, storage, and water use. Continuity emerges not through texts, but through design. The civilization is invisible in history, but visible in archaeology. This forces a reconsideration of how civilizations survive. The Indus legacy faces a persistent obstacle. Without deciphered writing, interpretations depend on material patterns. These patterns show coherence, but not intention. This uncertainty shapes the narrative. A civilization this sophisticated left no interpretable explanation for itself. Scholars infer cultural continuity from objects, settlement distribution, and environmental evidence, but the absence of explicit records makes the Indus world appear more fragmented than it was. Most accounts emphasize this ambiguity. Does silence imply simplicity or complexity beyond current interpretation? Later, South Asian cultures inherited infrastructural logic, brick metrics, water distribution ideas, weight systems, without monumental or textual transmission. This creates a paradox. Influence without lineage, impact without attribution. What spread was not narrative, but technique. This complicates attempts to define what Indus civilization means after its cities fell. A clearer conclusion emerges. The Indus world shaped later cultures through systems rather than stories. Its legacy is infrastructural, logistical, and methodological. This perspective is often understated. The Indus civilization became history by disappearing from it. What remains are the echoes, patterns embedded in settlement logic and civic organization across regions that never knew their origins. The Indus world endures not as a remembered civilization, but as a framework underlying others. How many ancient systems persist beneath modern cultures without recognition? The Indus case shows that influence can outlast identity. The archaeological record is incomplete. The systems remain visible. What is missing is the voice of the civilization that built them, still silent, still undeciphered. The greatest Indus legacy may be the part we can no longer hear. The Indus Valley didn't vanish because it was weak. It vanished because the world around it changed faster than any civilization could adapt. And yet, what remained? The precision, the planning, the order without kings and cities without hierarchy, still stand as one of the great unresolved structures in human history. This was more than a civilization. It was a demonstration of what becomes possible when power does not depend on a throne. For a deeper exploration of these overlooked worlds, if this opened your eyes to a story the textbooks barely cover, you'll find even more inside world history, a visual journey from the dawn of civilization to the 21st century, the source behind this entire series. You can find the link below or in the channel description. And if you want more untold history brought to life with this same cinematic depth, subscribe to History Brought Alive. The next episode is already on its way. And trust me, you don't want to miss the next civilization that rewrote the rules of the ancient world.